first of all, a little bit about myself and what we do. You know, I'm on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. It's a pretty wonderful place. We do run a cash practice here. My specialty really is in clinical kinesiology, and I've been practicing kinesiology probably for about 12 or 13 years, and have been using a lot of nutrition and homeopathic medicines and herbs for about 12 or 13 years now as well. We're going to start first with the bowel and the toxic cycle. So what we typically see in the practice here, and for years of doing this, is that what really happens is just through a poor diet, through an inverted way of eating and thinking, the digestive tract gets tremendously stressed. Out in this area, we find a lot of people who don't get breakfast in. They're having usually coffee and a donut for breakfast, and from all the things that we're seeing, as we find with medications that we're taking, the GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, there's just massive stress in the GI tract. And the stress accumulates in the GI tract, and what happens basically, it just weakens our immune system. So we need to have some solutions for these things to support the digestive tract, and especially that liver, which I think is an extremely important organ. Liver, that I find, is one of the most important organs, if not the most important organ in the body. It's also the warehouse for what I think is for the qi of the body in Chinese medicine, to distribute that qi to the other glands and organs. And basically just what happens, what I'm observing with many people, is that the digestive tract gets tired, it gets weak, the abdomen gets distended. We either go from constipation or folks with diarrhea or IBS, not enough bowel movements typically. And that really does affect our immune system tremendously and slowly builds up toxins in that liver. Basically, everything you eat and drink and breathe has to be filtered through that liver, and over time and distance, it's just getting really, really tired. So what we need to do is find solutions for that, and I think we have some good solutions here with Inno-Vita, which the products we'll get to in just a moment. Also to mention about the bowel and the toxic cycle, one thing that's really important to mention about that, I feel, is the emotional storage in the second and third chakra there in that GI tract. I find that so many of our problems that we're finding, it's kind of more of a Chinese philosophy of the 5 elements, really, is that the emotions, the mental and emotional and psychological component of health, is so overlooked and really very, very hard to diagnose. But I find that it gets stored in the intestinal tract quite a bit. And if we can get that area moving, free up that stagnation, get the things just really starting to move in through there, we can really do great help for just about any type of disease process here, because that's, in my opinion, about 70% of your immune response is really through the GI tract. And just look for things that you're finding with your patients, any drugstores and so forth, acid reflux, and all the problems that we're finding with GERD and antacids. Are massively selling these things, and people are looking for solutions to this, and over time and distance, that's what's really, really weakening our immune system. Distended abdomens, decreased fiber intake, and so forth. So we, in our practice here, we use a lot of lifestyle changings, doing diet journals, and educating our patients, obviously, about what to eat and what to do. And it tends to work out very, very well. Some of the products that we use for this with Inno-Vita is Coltrax, which is something that I've had great success with, and especially in little babies, little kids who have constipation. The liquid Coltrax works very, very well for that. It's great support for the digestive tract, for the large intestines, the ascending, the descending transverse colon. Coltrax helps provide the beneficial nutrients to maintain the friendly microflora, which helps the body regulate and solidify digestive waste, resulting in normal excretion. And it's just really great for anybody who's having a stagnant bowel. And 2 to 3 bowel movements a day, I'm sure we all know that, but that's pretty much the normal situation. You'd also want to check Livergy for this. I've had a lot of fun with this product. We use a lot of it, and also sometimes I'll use both the liquid and the pill extracts with this also. So Livergy has just been a great remedy to not only help with detoxifying the liver and getting it to release a lot of the waste and impurities in there, but I find that if you can check, if you have a way of using kinesiology, if you do that, you can check the Livergy also for the emotional challenges that get hung up in the liver. And the emotions of that liver oftentimes are the anger, frustration, depression, but I find that I like to use that to balance some of the remedies in the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. That liquid extract works very, very well for that. The next remedy that we have to work with the bowel and the toxic cycle would be Tox-Ex. Tox-Ex helps, it says here that Tox-Ex helps the body to eliminate the residuals and toxins caused by harmful microorganisms and reorganizes out the worn out tissues. So I like Tox-Ex for the lymph system, and there's a very intricate balance with the lymphatic system, as we know, and the GI tract. Sometimes we'll use both the Tox-Ex and the Livergy, but what we find with that is we just have to get motion. Motion in the body is extremely important. Motion of the digestive tract especially, to get that moving will upregulate any disease process, any problem you're really having with that situation. I can tell you about Di-Gessta. I just had a wonderful little patient here that came from Atlanta who was in pretty critical condition on last Thursday, actually. And we put him on this Di-Gessta product, and really helped his digestion out quite a bit. The liquid extract worked wonderful, the one over here towards your left side of your screen. But there's digestive enzymes in here, and it's worked very well. Once again, we do the muscle testing to determine what's working and what's not working. But the wonderful thing about the product, I can tell you, is that the bioenergetics with the synergy of these herbs tends to help the digestive tract. So when we look back, I'm going to go back to the digestive tract. All that food that's coming in here and coming into the stomach is getting processed up through that liver. And what I find very commonly in practice is real simply that these livers are extremely, extremely fatigued. And if we can get the balance between the liver and that pancreas working properly, you can get a lot of harmony of the emotions working very well, get the body to normalize out digestion with the acids within the stomach, and proper dietary modifications obviously can get the small intestines working better. The bowel is obviously having a lot of problems these days with the amount of antibiotics that we're finding in foods and antibiotics from the medical community, and it's just a very weakened organ system. So moving on into Lepterra is something we use for the digestive tract. It really is a meal replacement for breakfast, and it's something that I'm sure a lot of you practitioners out there have tried some things and they might not taste all that well, but Lepterra does taste fantastic. It's a very sweet drink. And we've had a lot of success getting little ones to have this for breakfast instead of having the Eggo waffle or the sugary cereals. It really works very well. Lepterra's got quite a bit of enzymes in it, and just a fantastic, I use it basically as a multivitamin for the body. And it's a simple thing for us just to get a quick 2 to 3 minute breakfast in that otherwise is going to be nothing, or a cup of coffee, and really set you up for some bad problems and inflammatory responses with hypoglycemia and diabetes that come with that. The metals are something that I'm finding very prevalent in practice, and metals, especially mercury, are probably the most active culprit that we see out here. But heavy metals are really defined as any kind of metal that we find that accumulates in the body, any amount of metal. And how we test for that in our office, we do clinical kinesiology with the metal test kits. Also, we do EDTA and DMSA provocative challenge tests and hair analysis. And what we're mainly finding here is mercury, tremendous amounts of mercury. And mercury can cause severe GI disturbances. It attacks our central nervous system. It interferes with the function of selenium. It also acts as an immunosuppressant, so you really want to take a look at that. If mercury's on board, what we find out is that you're going to find a lot of infection, low-grade infections that probably aren't going to show up very well during blood tests. However, they're going to be there. Usually fungus and parasites go with the mercury is what I find. And also, mercury can have a tremendous effect, and other metals as well, on the enzyme activities. It can inactivate these enzyme systems. They have a fantastic product, and I love this product. It's called Meta-X for the mercury, or for any really chelation process that we like to work on. Meta-X has been something that is very beneficial. I'll usually stack these two products together just to get a better response, as long as they're a good drainer and the kidneys are open with it. However, Meta-X is just wonderful for kids. It's very hard to get products that I have found that have worked really fantastically with metals, but I love the Meta-X. It's worked for me. It's helped me out tremendously. Many other patients it's helped out. We also have animals, believe it or not, that we treat in this office that we put them on, and we see fantastic results with it. But look for a weak immune system with this. Look for a lot of, with the metals if they're showing up, look for things like chronic fatigue or fibromyalgias or really any autoimmune situation, look well to the metals and find a way to test for those things, especially just doing the kinesiology or any types of provocative challenges where you can do the urine testing is a nice way to do it as well. We mainly do it through the kinesiology in here unless the patient requests and is willing to do the provocative challenge. Oftentimes we'll use both. It's been a real nice remedy to use the Meta-X for the heavy metals. And what we find is if the metals are on board, very simply, you're going to have a weakened immune system and we become more toxic. And once again, that liver will become inflamed. And if that liver gets inflamed, basically what's going to happen there is the body's going to be completely thrown into a downward cycle. And I find that, once again, that liver does affect the flow of qi. And if that qi is off, our emotions are going to be all over the board and we're not going to be able to live from a very powerful standpoint. Livergy, for once again a great product for the liver to support it. I use Livergy every time I find metals, and I usually also use a remedy for this to support the kidneys, which we have a product called Kidney Clear, a hand-in-hand product with a thyroidin. Thyroidin is a great remedy to use just to support a hyperthyroid or a hypothyroid. Thyroid function is very critical in all protein synthesis in the body, and in fact in every body tissue it is. Also influences our RNA. Thyroid's very important for oxygen, and it has a direct effect, the thyroid, on your mitochondria in the body. So what I find out is if you've got a low thyroid, support the thyroid with a thyroidin, support it with the liver, and then that energy will come up very, very nicely. And it's a great way to just upregulate the system there. Some of the problems that you find with that thyroid, if you want to look at some of the clinical situations that your patients may present with, just to look at is going to be head hair loss or easy bruising, brittle nails, those types of things. Loss of the lateral third of the eyebrows, a good heads up to take a look at that. If you've got a long-standing thyroid, you'll see some of the women that lose that eyebrow and they tend to pencil that eyebrow in. Check that thyroid, and even if they're on Synthroid or any of the medications, you're going to want to support that because these medications do not change the energetics of the glands and organs in the body. They just suppress things, and they are not capable of energetically balancing the glands and organs, and that's so important because we see so many folks out here with weak thyroids on one of the 3 or 4 prescription meds that they use for that, and they're still very fatigued. They have the weight gain, they have the depression, and this depression can be debilitating for them, and some of these regulations that we can put them on to upregulate that thyroid is very beneficial to change the emotional state tremendously. And also look for brittle nails, the obvious things that you find with that, low motivation, hot and cold intolerances, those types of things would really indicate the problems that we find with the thyroid. When we do have metals, always look that you are absolutely going to have problems with infection, a low-grade infection. Once again, probably won't show up in the blood work yet, but look towards parasites, yeast, mold, and fungus with that. And we like to support the kidneys to get drainage and detox happening with that as well. Anytime I use a metal program, I usually use Meta-X, usually go into the Livergy. We can get back to that Meta-X, the Livergy. The thyroidin, I like to support that thyroid because you just get a better response. And then once again, the Tox-Ex. There's a fungus among us. The funguses that we find are, I think, mainly coming from the foods that we're eating and from the inundation of antibiotics in everything from salmon to chicken to turkey meat to cow's meat, and massive antibiotics from the medical community. So when we look at the types of pathogens that we'll normally see here in practice, things like viruses or bacteria or fungus and protozoa, parasites, and what I call unnamed infections that I find. We've had a lot of difficult cases with these pathogens, and we want to find out, first of all, why do we have these pathogens? Why are we not able to fight these pathogens a bit better? And what I find with that is that it's just really stress. Our body's stressed, and our immune system is overtaxed. It's overstressed, and there's a decreased usually flow in the acupuncture system, a stagnation of qi. There are also massive amounts of acidic foods that we're typically eating, which throws the body into an acid base instead of an alkaline base, which makes the perfect environment for the biology to start to change. So when we're looking into the pathogens, we've got some products that work for those. The viruses, there's a Viro-X here for viruses. I like the Viro-X not only for the viruses. I would take a look at this very closely for fungus cases. I used this quite a bit for fungus, as much as I do another product here called Phung-Ex. But Viro-X has been real beneficial. Once again, we just do clinical kinesiology, and we test to determine which one is going to offset the response bioenergetically, instead of using too much of the mind on those things, because as we know, the mind can be kind of limited in getting us results. Or I like to listen to the body and the body's ability to really express the truth through the muscular system. Microcyte, this is an anti-parasitic that's used. Microcyte is something that you want to look for your smaller types of parasites, the microscopic and the cellular sized. Microcyte is nice to use in combination with you'll find it with a heavy metal program. It can often go with that. The Paramac is for the larger gastrointestinal parasites that you take a look at. So parasites, we do see them here. You look for those, I would say, in mainly some of your very bizarre cases that you can't figure out, and test the whichever way you folks are testing, but test the antiparasitics to the body and see what it has to say, because you'll find that you can work many, many miracles if you find a hidden parasite in the body that can be removed. Bacto-X is what we use for the bacterial infections. I have also used that in the ear, a few drops in the ear, and have gotten very nice results with that. So if you have little ones who have infections in the ear, a couple drops, 2-3 drops, 3-4 times a day in those ears, usually will clear that up very, very quickly, within a day or less. So the Bacto-X helps fight the harmful microorganisms, staph, strep, and other types of bacterias. The Tox-Ex helps to just clean up the system from worn-out autoimmune diseases. I like that one for that. The Phung-Ex helps to get rid of that fungus. And that, or the Viro-X, is another one you're going to want to check. But the Phung-Ex has some pretty nice bioenergy in it. We find that that also can help with balancing the emotions. Anytime we find that there's any type of a flower remedy in these remedies that we work with, the flowers tend to work on the emotions, as we know with flower essences and so forth. But even just having evening primrose in here, Paw d'Arco, it works very, very well for taking a look at balancing the emotional states of frustration or aggression. And that fungus can oftentimes just get stored and stagnated up in the liver, is what I find the location for those. So stress, I would say, what is the cause of every disease that we see? It would be stress. And stress comes from so many places that we find. Stress comes from our emotions when we're in conflict with ourselves. It comes from the emotions of fear and anger and holding on to old griefs or guilts, frustration, aggression, being overly sympathetic, practicing medicine, right? Stress, biochemical stresses from the foods that we eat, electromagnetic stresses. There's many stresses just from our attitudes that we can have, whether we view life with joy or with fear. TV, television, the war, musics that we listen to. I had a boat engine that just blew up again. Again, that's a stress. 2 boat engines, okay, not fun. Lack of rest, kids, bills, you name it. But stress is really what is causing every disease process that we look at, whether that's coming from mental, emotional stresses or biochemical stresses or spiritual stresses. And as we work with decreasing stress, we want to remove the stress from our nerve system as well as our glandular system. And what I find that we're all doing a bit too much is just really have our foot on the gas pedal. Too many hours during the day, and we don't tend to break very much. And we have to tend to break and use that parasympathetic nervous system to relax and take time to reset our nerves. Otherwise, we get into the burnout situations that we do that affect those adrenals so much. But when we look at the endocrine system here, we see that we started up in the top of the brain. And the top of the brain, basically you look at the interconnection between the thalamus, the world outside, of us and how we interpret that on the inside through our brain. How does the mind interpret information through the hardware, which is the brain? And that comes from the thalamus to the hypothalamus and then into what is called our pituitary and our pineal glands. And over time, we can get stressed in these glands. So doing a thorough evaluation on the whole glandular system, because it's so intricately tied in with our neurological system, we have to really have a good way of taking a look at that, because that will affect everything from our neurotransmitters. Stress affects the neurotransmitters in a very, very negative way, specifically epinephrine and norepinephrine, which is adrenaline, which comes from our adrenal glands, which sit right on top here of our kidneys. And all that fight or flight information is being processed by these two little fellows right here. So we have products to support those, and in fact products to support the thymus, the thyroid, and the brain, as well as the pineal and pituitary, and the gonadals. So when we look at some of the products that do support that, as well as I would say this is responsible for your shield system, especially this thymus gland here, has a lot to do with your bioenergetic shield around the body, and that's where I believe that all disease begins, which is in the field around the body, or the energy field. We can call that the aura or the bioenergetic field. Extremely important to take a look and have a system to evaluate that. Cerra-Logic is really a product that is for the brain, an overall tonifier to help the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. And as we know, or maybe don't know or do know, but we have a prefrontal cortex, that's our new brain, which can be in conflict with our old animal brain. And so we're trying to decide between, really between our spiritual being and the conflict of our ego. And sometimes those guys are in battle, as we know. So products to support these things can be very, very helpful. So Cerra-Logic is a remedy that I use to really help a total brain tonifier. And it's just a great remedy when it is indicated. You can see some nice results and some nice sedation effects of relaxation and getting the parasympathetic nervous system to start to kick in. Pituitary, this is very important with that endocrine system because it does relate to our thyroid. Pituitin is very important to use when evaluating the thyroid as well as the adrenals. The pituitary is your master gland. And the information that we receive from outside of ourselves, outside of our body, that has to be interpreted through our visual cortex, through our emotional systems, then gets processed through our pituitary, which makes many types of precursors to tell the rest of the glandular system how to work. So thyroid-stimulating hormone coming from that pituitary to tell that thyroid how to work to create the T3 and T4. So these remedies are designed and do have a bioenergy, especially these liquid extracts. I think there's something very, very special about the synergy of these types of herbs right here. The nice thing about these remedies is they're also in a compatible casing in the capsule that the body does like to test to energetically. We'll go to the thyroid next because that's the next gland beneath it. But this is good support for the thyroid and the parathyroid. A great little test maybe that we want to take a look at, considering for that thyroid, is a little bit of iodine on the skin, 2% solution. I like to use that in the office here. And you can just see if you can hold the stain for 24 hours. It's a simple little test. And if not, we can support the body with both iodine as well as the thyroid and to upregulate that thyroid. And when you find that somebody's got a weak thyroid, boy, you get them on a good program there, their emotional state is going to change, and it's going to change for the better, as well as the ability of the body to start to metabolize calories and start to lose some weight. So Thymossure, this is for our thymus gland, which creates a lot of wonderful things for our immune system. I teach our patients here to do a lot of tapping on the thymus gland very frequently because it reignites the acupuncture system and gets the chi to go again. Just by doing what we call the thymus thump, the old thymus thump is a great thing to do. When we've been affected by stress, I feel that the adrenals and the thymus are the two glands that take the hit of these things, whether that's from an emotional phone call or problems at work or being stuck in traffic. How we respond to those things sometimes isn't with love and joy, but is with frustration, and that decreases and desynchronizes the flow of the meridian systems in the body. So look towards the Thymossure as a great remedy to assist in stressful conditions in any type of an immune weakness situation. It works very, very well. And Adrenex, of course, for the adrenal glands. This is support for the adrenal medulla and the cortex. Once again, in a liquid version as well as a capsule version in through here. And this just really helps with that fight or flight reaction. It helps with a lot of physical stresses. Look towards the adrenals if you're having patients that don't hold their adjustments, where their adjustments are not, we in chiropractic care can adjust the spine and it can go out as soon as the patient goes home or goes to the car, and that's not a good thing to hear when they're not holding their adjustments. But adrenal stress is a major part of that, and you can do some simple tests that we'd love to share with you on how we can evaluate those adrenal glands and finding out how do we use these products, what are the right questions to ask. And that brings us down to a next product, which is a great product for the emotional system. We have both Manafirm here and Femifirm, and I find that these do balance. I would say they're sort of like a constitutional remedy in Chinese medicine. They work on the constitution and the emotional system. So think of this for somebody who's stuck in life, somebody who is not in their power, somebody who's just a very weakened spirit. It's a great tonifier for the male and female energy systems, or we can call that the constitution for those acupuncturists that may be on the phone here. But this has been a good formula. We're starting to use more and more of this because it's starting to test, because I learned a little bit of a new way on how to test for this formula. So I'm having a lot of fun with that one at the present time. And Seda-Quil, another great remedy for relief and relaxation and sedation. This is something just to get your parasympathetics, the relaxation nervous system, to kick in. It really just helps to feel calm and relief from stress. And one of the best things to do with this is just open it up and try it, and give it a try, and watch your a good night's sleep come, and de-stress from the typical onslaughts of daily living, as I would say. Getting the stress out of the system through things like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, another great thing, just natural things that we can do, will influence the flow of what we call Qi in Chinese medicine, which works very, very, I would say, is one of the major players in all of disease, if not the most important after a conflicted mind. And motion, anytime you can get motion into this body, motion into the lymph system, motion into the liver, motion into the endocrine system, you're going to get a nice response from the body. And we all know how the body can heal if we can just work with it a little bit naturally, and just teach our patients, I think, really how to get on the brake pedal a little bit and disconnect from the hustle and bustle of life, and just trying to teach them how to meditate, how to do some exercise, yoga. Those types of things are extremely important to an overall balanced nervous system. The ADD and ADHD, and what we typically see with the little ones coming in the office here. What I'm observing with this is metals. A lot of this, I feel, is metallic and mercury. So what we find with ADD out here, and there's quite a few hyperbaric oxygen clinics opening up, and those folks are telling me that they are seeing 1 out of, I guess, every 125 kids now being born are autistic, is the statistics they're giving me on that. So we've got autism, ADD, ADHD, and I feel so much of this is just really related to toxicity in the body. And one of the things we have to keep in mind, again, is that there's really not a barrier between the fetus and mom's placenta, and that little one will absorb all the toxins and all the chemicals, the pesticides, the herbicides, and especially the metals. So if you're working with moms and future moms, get them cleaned up before they have a baby, because you save so much stress and pain and suffering with these things, and you can absolutely, I believe, prevent a lot of these things. And what we find with autism here, and what we find with ADD and ADHD, which I think is just a lesser amount of that, is really a toxic brain, and the brain doesn't run very well without the proper nutriments for that. So with ADD and ADHD, specifically with that, what I'm finding is evaluate the diet. Make sure you get these kids on a very important and healthy breakfast. I think that makes a world of difference to balance the blood sugars, because our emotions tend to follow our blood sugar line, is what I find. And if we get hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic, we are going to be extremely emotional people. And what we find with that is The Lepterra comes in and works very nicely with that, and once again, for adults or for kids, we can get kids to drink this where I couldn't get kids to drink, very little ones to drink some of the other formulas we were trying. It has a pleasant taste to it. It has a tremendous amount of nutrition, and you can see the changes take place within 1 to 2 weeks. Massive changes is what we're finding. So we're working with a lot of the schools out here, and it's been a lot of fun to do that because the little ones really, they're close to my heart, and I just really love doing that. So with ADHD, number one, eat your breakfast. Eat Lepterra if you're not getting a good breakfast. Educate the patients about the breakfast and what is a proper way to eat, and the food combining with the whole grains and the vegetables, the legumes, and the fruits. And if we can get them eating that, the problem with the little ones, they won't eat it, but a lot of them will eat the Lepterra, and that's a good way to get them eating the other ones. So if you find with the ADHD through whatever testing you're using that you're having the metal concern, this Meta-X product is definitely something to get in your practice and try it. It's really just been a godsend, the Meta-X for me. It's been fantastic, and I've just seen a lot of things open up where we haven't been able to see that, especially with ADD, ADHD, and autism. The next one that we use for ADHD, support the brain. Pituitin is something to think about with that. Another thing to think about with the ADHD is Cerra-Logic, of course, is another good one to use. A real brain tonifier. It's support for the brain. When I'm getting tired and feeling a little bit out of sorts, I will take the liquid extract of that, and next thing you know, my brain is working again. So it comes back very nicely. You'd also want to take a look at the Livergy, supporting Livergy, evaluating the liver with this program of ADD because its toxins are creating inflammation. We find a lot of times with ADD, ADHD, and autism, obviously, is frustration, anger, irritation, irritability, or depression, and liver support is needed for that because those emotions are what will be displaying when a liver is out of balance. So getting that liver supported properly and with Livergy is a good way to start thinking about that clinically. Nervol, especially something for the balance between our neuroendocrine axis. Nervol is just a nice remedy to help your body integrate the coordinated effects between your central nervous system, your endocrine system, and the outside world. It tends to really help just organize your computer in the body very well, so that brain and your central and peripheral nervous systems can tie in very well with that. It's got some nice nourishing herbs in there to support damaged and frayed nerves and help them to start to just get a breather, so to speak. So we like this formula also for that. Seda-Quil, just to relax and relief, just helps you put them in more of a parasympathetic mode once again. I like this product. It's a nice thing for ADD and ADHD. Look real well to a lot of the things that we're finding with the food allergies with those things too, specifically wheat, sugar, corn, and dairy, all the processed foods, and the food additives and preservatives that we're finding. So do the testing for that, because you'll find that these food additives can have extremely inflammatory responses on our livers, and then the brains really don't fire so well. And what I believe is what's happening with a lot of these cases, really with any case, is that it's shutting down the acupuncture system. And I think all disease really does begin in our bioenergy field, without a doubt, first, and then it starts to affect the acupuncture system second, and then it starts to affect the cellular level and the physicality third. And we as practitioners, I think where we're having challenges is trying to figure out how do we make a diagnosis and what is in that field. What is that field, first of all? But that field around the body is something that stores our emotions. It stores our thought forms. It stores our traumas of life. And there's ways to clear that field up, and there's ways to influence that field in a very positive way. And we've got some nice products that are a nice fit for some of those things that have happened physically, for sure. And these products also can work to stimulate the release of what we call the chi in the body, which can open up the healing energy. And if we can get that chi to move, because the herbs cross over very nicely into the mental emotional components, a couple things do. Of course, the pharmaceuticals force it, but the homeopathic medicines and the herbs are very nice, not just on the chemical level, but they work energetically and they work on the mental, emotional, psychological levels is what I find. And I find that these diseases are really related to it's a several multifaceted answer here, but there's some systems I think that we're working on that are helping for that.